Good morning. Hey, I'm glad to be with you guys today, and looking forward to jumping into God's Word with you this morning. And as many, or maybe all of you know, this is my last Sunday here at Risen. And I want to make sure that my last Sunday here at Risen is special. Not because it's about me, but I want to make sure it's special for the same reason I wanted every Sunday to be special, because it's all about Jesus, it's all about His Word, it's all about what He's done and what He's going to do. And so I want to just focus in on God's Word this morning, and I want to hone in on it and see what God has to share with us today. I have to admit that in the last few weeks preparing messages and trying to understand and think about, in these last few weeks, what should I share? You know what I mean? What's the most important things to share? And so I've just been looking through 1 Peter. God put 1 Peter in my heart, and so we've been kind of digging through that. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about this living hope that God has given us and the importance of that, and we should be excited about that. Last week, we talked about a pursuit of holiness, and I would like to encourage that as well. And then today, as we go into 1 Peter chapter 2, I'm going to give you a couple encouragements, okay? I want to encourage you to do a couple things. And then I want to remind you of something, okay? A couple encouragements, a reminder, and then I might end with another encouragement. So if you want to keep track, you can keep your encouragement tally, your reminder tally, and put it all together, and you'll know where we're at in the message as we go. So if you have your Bibles, open them up to 1 Peter chapter 2, and we're going to dig into God's Word together this morning. 1 Peter chapter 2. And we're going to start in verse 1, and we're just going to work our way through a little bit here. So let's read verses 1 through 3 to begin. Remember, Peter is writing to, this is kind of a general letter, not necessarily just to a specific church. So he's writing to believers. This would have been a letter to be circulated throughout churches, and so it's very much for them, very much for us here today. This is his encouragement to churches who would get a hold of this letter like we have today. He says to them, "So put away all malice and all deceit and hypocrisy and envy and slander. Put it off." Remember, when he say put off, it's like the Greek word is like taking off your old dirty shirt, right? You take it off because you don't want that on you. It's disgusting, and you're home for dinner, and you're not going to sit at the table like a slob. So you're going to take that off, put something else on. And so we're taking off the old me. We're taking off malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander, and we're putting on Christ. We're putting on the Spirit. We're wearing that. And then he goes on and he says, "Like newborn infants, long for pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation, if indeed you have tested that the Lord is good." Can I encourage you today? First encouragement. Can I encourage you today to put off malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander? Malice, a desire to do harm or to do ill will to somebody else, is not becoming of a Christ follower. Deceit has no place in the life of a Christian with the ultimate mission of sharing God's truth. The Christian should not be known as a poser or a hypocrite, but instead a Christian, a Christ follower, should set the bar for the rest of the world on what it means to be a person of character and integrity. A slanderer or somebody who tears down other people, this should not be how Christ's followers are known. These offenses are weapons of the devil, and they have no place in God's holy church. And so I want to encourage you today, as we read this list, that we would put them off, that we would throw them aside. And whenever we catch ourselves with a envious or slanderous thought, that we would say, "No, that's not me. No, that's not Christ. No, that's not happening today." That we would put these things off daily, because they are all unity destroyers. And we are called to be the church that is unified. And the world would know that we're legit and we're Christians and we love Jesus because of our unity and our love for one another. And so these things, we got to put them off. I got to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. If anybody out in the world, a non-Christian, They come to recognize you as somebody who slanders other people, somebody who does ill will to other people, somebody who is envious of other people. Just think about how excited they are going to be to hear the news of Jesus Christ coming out of your mouth. If we don't represent Christ, people aren't going to listen to the message of Christ. So we must represent him well. And then he goes on in verse 2 and he says, like newborn infants long, we also must long for pure spiritual milk. Babies. I still got a baby, even though she's growing up fast. She's 5 months old. And babies, man, they need that milk, and they want that milk. And my wife was gone for a little bit yesterday, and I had a bottle, and I was trying to feed her and stuff. But you know what she really wanted? She wanted mama. And when mama got home, she wanted mama, because mama had something to offer that daddy didn't have to offer, okay? She wanted that. And so she was yearning for it. She knew that that's what's going to build her up. That's what's going to grow her and develop her the way she needs to be grown and developed. And Christians, we have to consider, what are we longing for? Because whatever we long for is going to have an impact on us. We are going to be a byproduct of that which we are longing for. So those things in our life that we long for, that we desire, that we want, when we get that, how is it going to impact us? And he says, listen, what you need to be longing for is the pure spiritual milk. We need to be, I'm not going to tell you what you shouldn't long for today. I could write a list, 1,000,000 miles long. I'm not going to tell you what you shouldn't long for. I just want to tell you this. Long for truth. In a world that is so divisive and there's so opinionated, right? In a world that has so much going on right now, I'm not going to tell you what not to long for. I'm going to tell you long for truth. And there's only one place that I know to get pure, unfiltered truth, and it's in God's Word. Long for time with God. Long for time in His presence. Long for time in His Word. And in so doing, you will grow up on that pure spiritual milk in the way that you should go. And we will do that if we recall how good the Lord is, if you've tasted and seen and know that the Lord is good. All right, let's go on. Verse 4. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. He says, as you come to him, that's Jesus, right? A living stone who was rejected by men, but in the sight of God chosen and precious, you yourselves, he's talking about us here, are like living stones being built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, and we'll come back to this term priesthood later, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For it stands in Scripture, behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone, chosen and precious, and whoever believes in him will not be put to shame. So the honor is for you who believe, but the honor is for you who believe, but for those who do not believe, it says, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. They stumble because they disobey the word, as they were destined to do. If you remember in our last message series through parables, when we went through the parable of the tenants, we talked about this idea of the cornerstone a little bit. And so I'm just going to get us all on the same page with this cornerstone. The cornerstone was the foundational stone for any building in this culture. They would put the cornerstone down first, and then every other stone would be built and put in to fit on the basis of that cornerstone. And so if your cornerstone was weak or off-centered or wrong, then the whole building would be wrong. Everything else you did would be wrong if the cornerstone's not right. And he's saying Jesus is our cornerstone. And so if your cornerstone isn't Jesus, if he's not what you're building your life on, then it doesn't matter how high quality the other bricks that you build are, your building's going to be wrong. It's going to be off. What you do in this life is not going to be as significant as it should be because Christ is not your cornerstone. And so we have to make sure, first and foremost, Christ is our cornerstone. Because if he's not, he's going to be your stumbling stone. So he says that we are these blocks, and we ourselves are laid up next to Christ the cornerstone. You and me as followers of Christ, we are these spiritual stones, he says, put together, these living stones being built up into a spiritual house, which would be the church as a whole. And we're called to a holy priesthood, he says. So if I can encourage you today, I want to encourage you with this, to make sure that Jesus Christ is the cornerstone of your life. If you look at all your activities in your daily activities, the things you're doing and spending money on and time on and all these things, and you say, I don't know that these things line up with Christ, then maybe Christ isn't your cornerstone. So we need to make sure that before we do anything else, before we make plans for the future, before we decide even what's for lunch, we need to make sure that Christ is in his proper place in our life. We need to make sure that he's the cornerstone, that he is what we're building on top of, that he's what we're looking to decide what to do, where to go, and how to live in this life. Christ must be the cornerstone. He must dictate the structure of our life. I read this week. It says the call to Christian discipleship is the call to follow Christ with single-mindedness, to lose oneself in the service to the Master, to become identified with Christ in our life. I wonder how many of us are identified with Christ in our life. When others see us, then they work with us, or they go to school with us, or they know us, we're neighbors, whatever it is, do people associate Christ with us? Because they should. And we should be unashamed of that and excited about that. Because if you're not making him your cornerstone, then you're tripping over the very one. You're stumbling over the very one who could save your soul. 1 Peter 2, let's jump ahead a little bit here. 9 and 10. This is where I want to spend most of our time today, okay? 1 Peter 2, 9 and 10. It says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Let me give you 3 things that I want you to take home out of those 2 verses right there. Number 1, you are the priesthood. You are the priesthood. Now, yeah, I know what you're thinking. I ain't no priest, right? I understand what you mean, but you are. You, my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, are the priesthood. You see, in the Old Testament, the priest would be the go-between between the people and God. He would be the mediator, so to speak. The people of God, Israel, they would not approach God directly. They would go to the priest, and the priest would go into the Holy of Holies. And all these things they had a mediator all the time. And so the priest was God's representative to the people. And he was also the people's representative to God. You see, the priest had experienced God's love, his acceptance, his forgiveness, and so then he made it his job to help others experience that thing as well. He was the mediator. He was the go-between. That was until Jesus Christ came. What did Jesus Christ come to do? I mean, he came to do a lot of things, but what ended up happening is he became the ultimate mediator. He became the ultimate go-between between God the Father and us. He took our place on the cross. He died for our sins. He made a way. And when he died on the cross, the veil was torn. That which separated the holy from holies from everything else. It was torn. And so this is a different world that we live in now, because God is accessible by you and by me the same. God wants to hear from you, and He wants to speak to you, just like He wants to hear and speak to me or any other pastor or priest in this world. Jesus Christ is our ultimate mediator. And then Peter calls us. He calls us, earlier he calls us the holy priesthood. And then here in this text, he calls us the royal priesthood. So what he's saying is that not just the priest or the pastor can approach God, be heard by God, speak with God, and hear God. But now everybody gets to. Every follower of Christ who calls on the name of Jesus gets to approach the King of Kings. And then he goes on and he says, not just the pastor or the priest is responsible for ministry. You know, back then, the Levites and the priests, they would do all the ministry type stuff, but not so anymore. Jesus tore down the veil, and so now all of us, every believer, gets to do, gets to plan, gets to be a part of, gets to serve in ministry to God's people into the world. Not just the priest or the pastor is responsible for sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Listen, every believer gets to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. I hope you heard the phrase that I slipped into, the two words I slipped into every one of those. We get to. We get to approach God. Let's not take that for granted for a moment, that a holy God would care to entertain our presence. I mean, the creator of the world. You know, there's so many people that we deem as important or famous or whatever in this world, and they would not give you or I the time of day because they don't think that we are worth their time. But yet the creator of heaven and earth, the creator of you and me, the one who oversees everything in our universe, cares to have time with me. And how often I take that for granted. How often I don't have time for Him. Or so I believe. It's foolishness, church. We get to be in the presence of God, and may we understand what an honor it is. And we get to serve Him. We get to teach kids about Jesus. We get to feed hungry people. We get to lead in worship. We get to run the sound in the projector screens, and we get to do these things, church. We get to. It should be an honor for us to serve God in any way. Let's not forget that. And then we get to share the gospel with the world that we live in. We get to do this, church, because we are the priesthood. So you are the priesthood. Second thing, you are His priesthood. You are His priesthood. Listen to the words He says in verse 9 and let it move your soul today. He calls us a chosen race, a holy nation, a people for His own possession. It says that we are God's people. When has anybody ever talked about you that way? You know, when has anybody ever put that type of value on you? To be chosen, to be holy, to be a people and of His possession, to be His people, man. It lets us know that our value is not based upon what the world says our value is based upon. It's not based upon what we do. It's not based upon our accomplishments. It's not based upon our portfolio or our knowledge. It's not based upon these things, but instead, our value is based upon the fact that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, has chosen you. I think about, dodgeball as a kid and stuff, and picking teams, and man, it really stunk to be the last one picked, or to be at the end, or to get picked after people that you thought you were better than, right? Better than, why'd they pick him? Must be a friend thing, right? It couldn't be because they're actually better than me. That idea though, when they picked you, when they chose you, what did that do inside you? It gave you pride. Oh, somebody wants me. Somebody cares about, somebody wants me on their team. Somebody thinks that I have value to offer. They think that I can help them do this thing. It made us feel good, didn't it? Listen, we have been selected, we have been chosen, we have been identified as valuable and treated as such by the Lord of Lords. And so we read the scripture, we know that you are His dearly loved. You are His child. You get to represent Him. You have worth. Not because of what you do or because of what you don't do. You have worth because of what He's already done. We get to be His. We get to. He calls us a holy nation, which means a set apart people. We talked about holiness a little bit last week and what it means, and we'll dig into that a little bit here in a minute. Some of you may have seen on Facebook, I found this old Bible a couple weeks ago that I had bought in an estate sale years ago. Inside it, there were some notes. And one of the things I found that was really cool was these message notes. And I don't know who it was from. I know who the Bible belongs to, but I don't know if he wrote these message notes or if he they were typed. So I'm assuming he wrote it. Maybe he shared it with a Bible school or with a Sunday school class or something. But I was reading through these, and he was like, God was putting me and this dude on the same page at the same time. And I want to share an excerpt from this, which I believe was written in the 1950s. So remember the time frame here. We're talking 70 years ago. Okay, thanks. You saw me doing the math, didn't you? 70 years ago-ish. All right, this is what he wrote. Ours is a day of conformity, when we tend to bring our standard of morals and beliefs down to the level of the world rather than raise them to the Christian level. He wrote this in the 50s, okay? Now, I know we're all thinking that's applicable today. We can go to the good old days, back in the 50s when things were perfect. Apparently, they weren't as perfect as we want to believe, okay? He says, so we tend to bring our standard of morals and beliefs down to the level of the world rather than raise them to the Christian level. He says, we compromise on all issues, weakening our Christian character with each and every decision. He said, ours is a day in which the church can hardly be distinguished from purely social institutions. We are more like good, well-adjusted citizens of the world than crusaders for the cause of Christ. Man, that's a gut shot for me. He wrote it in the 50s. It was true then. It's true today. And we're called to be a holy nation, not to be a nation, a people of conformity, but we're called to be a people that are set apart. We're to be set apart for something and set apart from something. We are to be His, and that should make a difference, and it should make us different, that we are His. It should change us. Third thing. You are the priesthood, you are His priesthood, and you are His priesthood with a purpose. Remember last week we talked about pursuing holiness and to be set apart. And holiness doesn't just mean that we're set apart from something. We're set apart from sin. We push that aside. But we're also set aside for something. We're set aside for a purpose. In verse 5, he gives us a glimpse at what some of these things may be. He says in verse 5 that we are to, as these living stones, offer spiritual sacrifices. And so all of us as Christ's people, we should be offering spiritual sacrifices. That is, that our daily lives should be lived for the call of the kingdom. That our daily lives we should be serving and sacrificing for the sake of the kingdom. How do we do that? Well, we serve God. Sure, we serve Him. We praise God. We do good. We share our resources to help those who are in need. We bring people to Christ. We sacrifice our desires for the good of others. We spend time in prayer and study of God's Word. We make spiritual sacrifices. All of these things are spiritual sacrifices. But then in verse 9, I'll read it in context again. He says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for His own possession." Why? He says, "that you may." Why? Why have we been chosen and made this priesthood, a holy nation, a people of His own possession? That you may proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of darkness, that is what we were in before Christ, into His marvelous light, that He would illuminate to us the knowledge of Him and who He is and what He's done. So we were selected, chosen, and created so that we would be His priesthood to proclaim His excellencies. To proclaim His excellencies. What does it mean to proclaim? It means to share something that was previously not known or unheard of. We proclaim what people lack knowledge of. If you know somebody with cancer, and if you knew the cure to cancer, you would proclaim its excellencies, right? You would, I know it, and I'm going to proclaim to you what you don't know because I know it'll help you. If you knew somebody struggling with COVID and you had the cure to COVID, you would proclaim its excellencies. You would let them know because you knew it would change their life. If you knew somebody who was struggling in life and they were at rock bottom and they felt like they were going nowhere fast and they were ready to give up, and you knew the keys to success, you would proclaim its excellencies. You would tell them all about it because you want to help them and make a difference in their life. If you knew somebody who was struggling in their marriage, ready to give up, and you knew 4 steps to make your marriage better by Sunday, you would proclaim its excellencies because you want them to know what they need to know to make a difference in their life. If you knew someone medically, physically, financially, or relationally struggling, and you knew some life-changing wisdom to give them, you would proclaim its excellencies. I think we can all agree on that. And we all know people lost in sin, struggling daily, starving for hope, dying not of diseases, but dying in their own self-pity. We know people who are dying and losing life's battle because of their bondage to sin. And we're speechless. We're quiet. We don't want to offend them. We don't want to bother them. They're probably busy. They've probably heard it before. We have a million excuses. And there's millions of people dying every day. And they don't know the living hope of Jesus Christ that you know. There's millions of people that will die still yet today And what they need more than anything is not a cure and not 7 steps, and they don't need money. What they need more than anything is for you as the priesthood of God to proclaim His excellencies. I don't even know if this is right, but I want to say they don't even need to come to church today. What they need is you to go to them today. Amen. If we wait for people to show up here to hear about Jesus, we might as well get comfortable because we're going to be waiting a while. What our world needs is us to go to them. It needs us to proclaim His excellencies to them. To know that it's more serious than cancer or COVID or marital distress or financial stress. That it's superior in every matter of worth to anything and everything. That it's the only thing eternal. It's the only thing that really lasts. It's the only thing that really matters. And that's what we need to waste our breath proclaiming His excellencies about. So let's not sleep on it. Let's not wait for it. Dare I say, let's not even pray about if we should or shouldn't. Let's proclaim His excellencies. Let's tell people what God has done in our life. Let's tell people what God has done. Let's tell people what Christ has accomplished. Let's tell people that there's hope. Let's tell people they can have a new life. Let's tell people about the goodness of God so that their lives might be changed, their eternity might be spared, and they might find hope today even in Jesus Christ and Him alone. That old 1950s note that I found also said this. He said, "It is essential that we realize that the highest service man can render to another is to lead them to Christ." I talked to my grandma Annie. I've talked about her before. She's the one that's 102 and she's awesome. And I called her the other night. I was driving and we talked for a half hour. I was like, "Graham, isn't it your bedtime? You're 102. No, she kept talking. So we talked, and I love my Graham for 102 reasons and some, you know. I mean, I love so much about her. But what I love about her most is that she was the one who took my mom to church. She was the one who introduced my dad to Jesus. I think you could probably trace it back and you could say that if my Graham wasn't who she is, I might not be who I am. But she understood. The most important thing you can share with your granddaughter, the most important thing you can share with your grandson-in-law, the most important thing that you can do is lead them to Christ. We've lost sight of that, church. We've placed a million things higher on our priority list. And I'm not stepping on your toes. I'm letting God's word step on mine. Every believer is a part of the priesthood. We're called to represent Christ and how we live and how we talk and what we do and what we say. And we're called to help others experience Him. Being the church, as our sign says, when you leave, go be the church. Being the church is sharing God and sharing God's love with other people. It's making Christ real and tangible to people. The church is not a building. Church is not an institution. Church is certainly not a pastor. It's the people of God. The people of God loving God, the people of God loving others, the people of God proclaiming the excellencies of Jesus Christ to a lost and dying world. Church, proclaim His excellencies. Today, tomorrow, 5 years down the road, 100 years from now, if the Lord tarries. Proclaim His excellencies till there's no breath left in your lungs. Proclaim His excellencies even when you can't speak, write. When you can't write, smile. When you can't smile, wink. Proclaim His excellencies every way and in any way that you can. Because you're His priesthood. You're His priesthood. And you have a purpose. Let's pray. Our holy God, you have thought more of us than we dare to consider. Lord, that you would value us, that you would send your Son Jesus to be our mediator, to make a way for us to know you, to make a way for our sins to be forgiven, that He would, Father, bear the sins of mankind on that cross, even though He was sinless, so that we could be forgiven, so that we could speak to you right now, so that we could be made righteous in your sight, Lord. What an honor. And Lord, we are grateful today. Lord, may every day we wake up, we remember how grateful we are. And out of that gratefulness and our gratitude, may we go and proclaim your excellencies everywhere that we go, to work, to social media, to the gas station, to the grocery store, on the phone, in the car. Father, everywhere we go, everything that we do, Lord, give us the boldness and the excitement and the passion to proclaim your excellencies. Lord, we love you. We thank you for hearing our prayer. I pray this in your Son's name. Amen.